I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation.
The leader you were several years ago is not the leader you were today. And the leader you are today is not going to be who you are going to be as a leader in the future. Leaders, ergo, need to be constantly evolving, very agile, and constant learners. And I think that if I were to pull out two major themes from my interview with my next guest was that we go through different phases. One particular pathway may be as a young leader, you've been tapped to take on the development of a team, but you've always been an individual contributor. And now all of a sudden you're in a whole new world. It's no longer looks like Kansas. And instead of doing the work, you have to lead others to do the work and to motivate and inspire and set vision and coordinate and be kind of the conductor, if you will. Another particular path or theme, I should say, of this interview that are not necessarily related to the first is that at some point in many people's careers, normally around the age of 40 or 50, there's a wake-up call. There is the proverbial Neo getting the phone call from Morpheus, in that we are now looking at our life from a different perspective. The success formula that got us to where we were or are is no longer going to provide us the kind of deep satisfaction and purpose-centered meaning that we so desire. So there's a sort of a reassessment. One might call it a midlife crisis, if you will. And so our conversation today kind of bounced back and forth between these two major transitions. And while they can happen at the same time, they're different pathways altogether. My guest has had one heck of a life, and I am so glad to be able to introduce him. His name is Mark J. Silverman, and he came to executive coaching and speaking after a successful career in technology where he generated over $90 million for fast-growing startups by bringing together executives, technical leaders, and stakeholders to close complex multi-million-dollar sales. As an executive coach now for about 10 years, enjoying a full roster of clients, Mark is committed to helping CEOs, senior leaders, and fast-rising high achievers leverage their resources and team for greater impact while creating sustainable success in all areas of their lives. He is the author of the best-selling book, Only 10s 2.0, which has sold over 75,000 copies. And to date, he's also a author of another book that just came out called The Rising Leader Handbook, Turning High Achievers into Effective Leaders. Mark J. Silverman on the business of intuition. All right, let's get this ball rolling here, Mark J. Silverman. It's great to have you on the show. I really appreciate it. I wanted just to lay the table a little bit, table settings here. So you've had quite a life. You know, you've been a marathoner. You've gone from rags to riches. You've had some substance abuse challenges. I think you've said at one point you were married and got divorced. You've built a very successful business. You've had many lifetimes almost in one lifetime. You know, it's been an amazing journey as far as I can tell, and I want to hear more about it. So I want to ask you three questions just to sort of start this process. And I got these three questions from, in a sense, another coach, and his name is Gerardo Sagate. He was on the show about 2 months ago, and he lives amazingly. He lives on the border between Switzerland and Italy. And in the weekends, he goes helicopter skiing in the Dolomites. And so I'm going like, already, I'm in love with this guy. What a life!
There's a life to aspire.
No kidding, right? So I said, so Gerardo, what do you do? And we were talking. He said he's going to, or he just came back from Davos, the World Economic Forum. And I said, so what is a coach doing at the World Economic Forum? And he said, well, I'm here to help to connect people to their heart. I'm here to get them back into their humanity so that as they begin to have their conversations about world events, they come to those conversations with their humanity intact. I went, I'm already sold. So he said, so what did you do? And so I'm going to ask you three questions, which is the same three questions he was asking these people at Davos. And I've actually used this with a couple of our clients, and it's a way of sort of getting to know somebody pretty quickly. So here's the question number one for you, Mark J. Silverman. Question number one, what is the dream?
The dream has changed quite a bit. The dream is peace and connection. The dream is peace and connection, simplicity.
Peace, connection, and simplicity. Okay. So question number two, what is the fragility? As in the word fragile. What is your fragility?
My fragility is the fact that I like drama, excitement, adrenaline, dopamine. Thus, the dream is peace.
So they're in partnership together.
I have a hunger for life. I have a hunger for experiences. I have a hunger for juiciness. Sometimes that's wildly beautiful and amazing, and sometimes it just creates drama that's not necessary. So thus the dream is peace.
Understood. So then the last question is, what is the apology?
I haven't done more.
I haven't done more with your life, you mean?
I have been blessed beyond anything any human being should ever be blessed. And I try to give, and I haven't given as much as I think I'm capable. And I would like to use more of my energy, more of my focus to give more as I move through my 60s and 70s.
So is the apology to yourself or to other people?
To the world. To the world.
Okay.
I was born here, and I was born here in a broken state. I was gifted a beautiful, amazing life and insights and talents and skills. And I think that there's a lot I can impact and do.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thanks for playing on those three questions. You
that
did
makes you
very
sweat,
well.
Man.
I know, right? You didn't want to take a break.
Sweat.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to get coached by I'm going to coach the coach, right? Yeah, I didn't expect that. But thank you for that. And I guess, you've got quite a nice coaching practice. You've written a book, which we're going to hear more about. But, one of the things I was reading about you was you made the comment that you wish you had known then when you were younger, what you know now. What is that? What do you know now that you wish you had known when you were younger? Which I think is going to tie us into the work that you do.
That I was okay. That I had choice, that I created my life, that I influenced my life, that I could make my life what I needed or wanted it to be, that it wasn't fait accompli, it wasn't done to me, that my brokenness wasn't the reality.
It's a great insight, my friend. That's really good. I don't know where I was. I was maybe working on some sort of video TikTok thing, and I was walking through an airport, and it kind of was trying to find a way of articulating what you just said, that I think that a lot of us have this perspective that the outside world is what creates our inside experience, that somehow we're a victim to what everything else is going on around us. And I'm not saying that we're not affected by it, but our ultimate life experience is within our own control. And so the way I was also trying to articulate it is that all the drama, the TV set of our life, if you will, that we're watching as we go around and we see things happen, and is actually sort of a mirror, the things that hurt us, affect us, to what's happening inside of us, that they are not somehow separated, but they work out of the same universe. They're the same energy patterns. And so we can choose to, absorb all of that, or we can rise above it, I guess is kind of another way of saying it. And it sounds like you have had many opportunities to learn that yourself.
Over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. So what was a big turning point for you in your life? I know there probably were many turning points, it sounds like, but is there one that really just jumps out at you and says, this is when I had a big aha moment that I'm still riding the wave of, that maybe is part of the work that you do, maybe it's part of your mission here on planet Earth, What was the event and what was the decision you made or the awareness that you had?
There were several. I think the biggest one was, I got sober in 1989 when I was 27 years old. You would think that was the big one,
Mm,
but that wasn't. When I got sober, I still spent all my time trying to make up for being the shit that I was before.
mm,
And that drove me. When I lost everything, when everything fell apart, stone cold sober, when I was in about 2009, my marriage fell apart, my business fell apart, my health fell apart, everything fell apart, and I was suicidal and depressed. I read a book by Pema Chodron, who wrote "When Things Fall Apart" and the places. She just wrote so many beautiful books. And she said, when tragedy happens, when something bad happens to you, you have two choices. You can harden and close, or you can soften and open.
mm,
And I was at the very, very bottom of my life. And I did not want to go on. And reading that, I made the decision to soften and open. I made the decision to be honest and vulnerable, and to give whatever it is I had to other people. So ever since then, I believe if I'm known for anything other than my books and all that stuff, I think I'm known for being vulnerable and honest,
mm.
in how I present myself in the world.
So, what would have happened had you made the other decision?
Probably would have made more money. No, I probably would have crashed and burned, because again, the way I'm built, with this appetite for life, with this appetite to connect on a really deep level to people, it would have come, and it did come bursting through sideways. It's like I hosted a podcast called Mastering Midlife: How to Thrive When the World Asks the Most of You. And I hosted that for like 300 episodes. And the premise of that was the drives and motivations that get you through your 20s and 30s start to crack and turn on you in your 40s and 50s. If you don't listen to that crack, if you don't listen to that shift that needs to happen, if you don't heal, because I've never met a super, super, super successful person that didn't have a pathology driving that, right? That pathology, that fuel that drives that need to be completely successful. If it's not dealt with, it'll burn you out. It'll explode in some way. And that happened to me. When I got really, really successful and became a millionaire, it was because I was trying not to be that homeless guy, right? That's cotton candy fuel. That's not an inner drive to create something. That's running away from something. That's hiding something. That's putting a Band-Aid on something.
Kind of like being a dry drunk.
It's like being a dry drunk, right? And we're all dry drunks. We're all running from something. We're all hiding from something. We're all trying to Band-Aid and wallpaper over something. And in your 40s and 50s, that shows up. And if you listen and you shift and you do the work and you go on an experiential weekend and beat a pillow and forgive your parents and do all those things that you need to do, you can now create the next chapter in your life. If you fight it, it's going to come out sideways. At first, it's going to whisper, then it's going to shout, then it's going to take your marriage, or it's going to take your health, or it's going to make you, blow up your business. It's going to get your attention somehow. So for me, that if I closed, it would have gotten my attention even further.
You brought up an interesting idea that I've never thought about or was never aware of, that we have, in societies long and short, old and new, that there's moments in one's time on planet Earth, so to speak, that you transition to the next level. If you're of Jewish faith, you go through a bat mitzvah. If you were a young man, there's a moment when you go out and you hunt and you come back, in 100, 200, 300 years ago, and now you come back a man. And that we have these, like my son, I remember when he was young, he didn't see the significance of it, but I did. He became a black belt when he was young, right about that tender age of about 14, So I thought, hey, this is a symbology of his transition, into manhood in some way, and in a way we sort of have homogenized things so much that we don't see those moments of transition. But I love the fact that you called one out, and calling one out that I've not thought about before is that one that you're talking about around 40 and 50, which is, I think, a transition into something more purpose-centered versus success-centered. I'm putting my words, not your words, into it. But Are you seeing that with everybody at this particular stage in their life, that the crack is starting to emerge, and we need to pay attention to? Is that a pretty common thing from your experience, that the midlife crisis is a ubiquitous experience, male or female?
Well, the crisis is not a ubiquitous. The calling to something different is ubiquitous. I see people in their 60s still ignoring the call, and still looking like they're treading water just fine and dandy. But I can see the cracks. I can see the running. I can see, I can see that. I think everybody is called because you get everything that you let's talk about successful people. We talk about people who get married, they have kids, they get the career that they want, and they catch the car. They're the dog that catch the car. And once you catch the car, you're like, wow,
now what?
Was this what I wanted?
Yeah.
Was this what is this significant other the one I want? There seems to be some younger models throwing themselves at me. Right. There seems to be other adventures that I could do. Oh my God, I wanted to be an artist and I'm not there's just so many things that come up. And now you have the means, the time, and the choices to do that. And I rarely see people not blow shit up if they don't listen. Right. I rarely see it go well. I see very few people being guided to something different.
Irony, man. I mean, or I don't know, serendipity. I was just having this conversation with a client yesterday that almost feels exactly like this one. And she's this quote unquote, very ambitious, successful physician. And as we were digging into it, it sounded like there was some discontent, and what's the discontent about, and she's not getting enough time with herself and her family. And this whole sort of trained into one's life, this hamster wheel of more and more and more, drive, take on more and more and more, prove yourself more and more and more. It's like, when do you ever arrive, right? When do you finally realize that you are the dog in the car and you finally caught it, And so I said, well, what is it that, what would the ultimate feeling be if you were able to be quote unquote successful? And she sort of thought for a while and she said, I think it's a few things. It's relaxation, it's peace, it's autonomy, it's freedom. It's luxury, being able to experience luxury, not necessarily like got to go spend money, but it's the juice of life, right? And I said, so what makes you think you can't experience that right now? You've got it set up that your mechanism, so to speak, is preventing you from the very thing that you are wanting. And yet that's what your whole success formula is trying to get you to experience. So there's something out of whack here. So the end of the conversation was, why don't you do some of the things that are luxurious, freedom-seeking, autonomy experiences now, and sort of change up that whole process. But it sounds very much like what you're talking about. Is she had the calling. She was the phone was ringing. Nia was asleep, and he picks it up, and it's it's time to look at your principles of life and your principles of your purpose, and maybe reorient yourself around that.
Right, but the problem with things like that is, why aren't you doing that? There's always Robert Keegan, the competing commitment, those unconscious things that are driving you that say it's bad to have free time. It's bad to have luxury, right? And unless we actually ferret that out of why don't I ever book that vacation? Right. Oh, because there's something in the back of my mind that says if I don't keep my foot on the gas pedal, I'm going to lose everything. And if we don't confront those subconscious things, we don't stand a chance in changing the behavior.
So you mentioned a key word, that those subconscious things, as we all know, that's most of what runs our life. And as I understand it, those subconscious imprintings around our definitions of success and how life works happen between the age of 0 and 7, 0 and 8, when we were in the care and feeding of our parents or other people. So how do you help your clients unpack all this and right the ship in the direction that might be more purpose-centered versus maybe some old, worn-out mores that they've been running their life on since they were kids?
I make them go underneath what's happening in any given situation. Today, I was talking to one of my clients, and he has a couple of initiatives that he wants to put forth in the company. And whenever you have to put forth something in the company, one of the whines that I always get is why do I have to fight for something that's good for the company? Why do I have to always fight everybody? Like, because enrollment skills are the only way to lead on a group of other leaders. Everybody wants resources. Everybody wants their ideas implemented. Everybody's egos are part of this whole thing. It just is. Fighting the fact that it is takes away your energy. So now let's hone your enrollment skills on doing that. Now let's parse out which part of this is your ego and which part of this is really good for you and the company. And he was like, oh shit. He's like, I want to grab these things because it'll look good on my resume. It'll look good, here, but actually it's not necessary. It's just more work for me. We boiled it down to what he needed to enroll people in that was really, really important. Now, forget that it's important. What's important to every single person who makes a decision? What's important to every person on the team that actually has to support this for it to go forward? We have to get in their heads, right? So what I do is I use the relationship with their boss, usually the CEO. I use their relationship with their team members. I use the relationship with their team, their significant other, for them to go inside and look at what's going on with them. Why did they shrink in the meeting? Why when the boss chewed them out, why did they turn that on themselves? Why aren't they having a difficult feedback conversation with someone who works with them? Right? Those kinds of things. And I have them turn inward to find out what is that subconscious, unconscious, or even maybe conscious thing that's going on with you. Now, is that helpful? How can we root that out? We root that out at the root. I don't have to play whack-a-mole with behaviors. Once I root that out, they intuitively know what to do.
And so tell us then how that leads into your overall model, which goes now into your book. There's probably a process aside from the one you just described. What does the jacket cover say? What do we get?
It's the Rising Leader Handbook, right? Turning high achievers into effective leaders, because the things that got you here, right? The things that get you to where you go, no matter what level you're at, when you want to go to the next level, you need a whole new set of skills. And if it's not a whole new set of skills, it's just a whole new art to the skills that you use each level that you move through the organization, or even when you're growing, if you're an entrepreneur and your team starts to grow, you were an entrepreneur, you started a business, you were really good at these things. You were great at being the chief bottle washer and the best salesperson. Now you have a VP of sales, and now you have accounting department. Now you have all these things. Now you have to learn how to be a leader for all these things instead of doing those things. So what we do is we work on, usually I get called in with the problem child. Like for me, my bread and butter is, Mark, so-and-so is so valuable to the company, full in a china closet, driving everybody crazy, right? Just making enemies here, or drives the CEO question, can you fix that? Those are my favorite. I love the uncoachable people. But then I also get calls of, Mark, I want to elevate so-and-so to C-suite something, to CFO, to what, but they won't speak up in meetings. They're the smartest person on my team, but I can't get them to speak up in the meetings. Can you help them find that courage? So we work on leading up. We work on leading across, leading on a team of strong leaders, leading your team, and then leading yourself, becoming your best version of yourself in every situation. And the dirty little secret is I basically use every one of those relationships and every one of those situations to help them transform who they are, so that they're different in every area of their life.
All right. So if I just sort of take a pause and I go back and think about what you've been saying, there's one track of the conversation which says, all right, when you're in your 40s or 50s, you get this calling that says, reevaluate your life, get yourself onto a path that's more purpose-centered. Your definitions of success might have been flawed. Boom. There's one side of it.
Your drivers were flawed.
Your drivers were flawed. Okay, good. On the other side of the fence, we've got this ambitious young, or call it whatever. We got this ambitious leader who has proven themselves to get a lot of work done, and now they've been tapped on the shoulder for another position. And instead of being the subject matter expert, now they have to work across many different people, be more of a coordinator, a conductor, if you will. So those are two different types of scenarios I see here, right? Now, the organization as an entity doesn't give a shit in some ways, because they just want, I don't mean to be callous, but they want they want things to continue to grow and survive, just like every entity does. The human being does, the dog does, the company does. They want to grow and survive and thrive, right? How we get there is probably the big mousetrap and the way we have to think about. But they may not necessarily have the same sort of energy around what the individual path is. Mm-hmm. The energy of the overall organization is pretty clear. We need to grow and survive. So my question then is this, Mark, is there sort of like, are you proposing that the transition that this high achieving leader who now needs to have these new skills happens to line up at the same time that person is reevaluating their life because they're at that stage? Do those things happen concurrently?
No, not at all. That was kind of my old life and my old focus. It rears its head. It actually rears its head almost all the time with my entrepreneur clients. So my entrepreneur clients are almost always in their 50s. Right. And that rears their head there. With the people who are climbing the ladder in the organization, that is not what we focus on. That's usually in their future. And what I basically tell them is, I am the ghost of Christmas future. I am in my 60s. You're in your 30s. You will be taking your significant other out on a date every other week. You will be getting a nanny. You will be supporting your home life, right? You will be taking care of your health. I have a rule with my clients, because they're usually half my age, that I cannot be in better shape than you. If I am in better shape than you at 35, at 62, there's something wrong here, right?
Isn't that the case? I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't have time. And then what they find is, when I get them to slow down, when I get them to handle their family life, when I get them to handle their health and their well-being, they show up at work so differently, right? It is profitable. But so that's what we work on. But let's talk about that. The young man that I was just talking about, he had this initiative that he wanted to present.
Yeah.
He's probably the hardest driver in the entire organization, right? He's a high D, more, he's conflict. He'll run into a conflict where most of the people on the leadership team are conflict avoidant. If we didn't have that conversation, he would have been the bull in the china closet. He wouldn't have gotten what he wanted. The company wouldn't have gotten an initiative that's really, really important to them. Now that we peeled back what was his ego, what was important, how he's going to present this to people, that initiative has a much better chance of going through and being profitable for the company.
Of course. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's almost like his strengths becomes his derailers, his
100%.
The thing that makes them so successful is the thing that will take you down. And I see that. And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening see that as well. And I always tell people, we're not trying to change your strength. In fact, we want to keep it. We just don't want it to get out of control. Exactly. We just want to put it in the right place at the right proportion. So I could see that that although you're seeing the separation between this person in midlife crisis who needs to reorient themselves around what success is based on principle, is separate from the individual who needs to be more successful in the company, but they very well might coalesce. It may actually happen at the same time, and they're going to share from each other.
For me, I love every speed bump in life that happens to anybody who's in my sphere, because I can use that to get them to listen to me, to go inside and find out what the greater good is. So a midlife crisis, a problem at work, a job loss, a relationship issue. I love all these things because nobody will listen. People who are successful won't listen, right? Things are going great. They just won't listen. So I need a little crack in the armor in order to get someone to see that something could and should be different. Does that make sense?
So when you said they won't listen to you. They won't listen to what others are saying. They won't listen to themselves. I mean, give me something to latch that comment to.
Okay. So I was talking to an entrepreneur, and he was interviewing me to hire me. He's the CEO of a company, and we're having this conversation, and he's talking about leadership skills. He's talking about growth. He's talking about all this stuff. And I said to him, one of the problems is your health. And he was really insulted. And I said, he was in his mid-50s, and I confronted him on his health, and he got really defensive on it. And then I said, and by the way, you're completely out of integrity, so nothing in your life is going to work. And he says, I'm totally honest. And he was having an affair.
Hmm.
I said, no, you're not. You have no integrity. You're cheating on your wife. And we're in the middle of this office. And he just looked at me. He goes, I'm just out of integrity there. I said, well, if you're out of integrity there, you're out of integrity everywhere. You just don't have integrity.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and he goes, and he sat there for a minute. And then he goes, I had a heart attack 3 years ago.
Hmm.
I was like, I figured. Right. But he was like so one-upping me. We were going toe to toe.
Yeah.
And when I called him on his health, and that didn't do it. So he said, all right, I'm going to think about this. And he called me the next day and he said, you're my coach. I said, why? He said, because nobody's ever called me on my shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it took that and he said, I want my integrity more than anything in the world. And he cleaned everything up, right? And changed everything. And his health, his relationships. And he said, I want one life. I want one congruent life. Right.
Yeah.
Now he has an opportunity to soar.
And alignment, and authenticity, and the inside matches the outside.
Right.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
he could have gone another 10 years with nobody showing him the thing that's draining the life out of his life.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Telling the truth is probably one of the greatest things coaches can do. And it sounds like you did that really well with that particular guy, which
it's really hard because my internal voice is like, Silverman, you're talking yourself out of a client. Silverman, you're talking yourself out of a client, but my mouth can't shut up. So and every time it's the thing that's won me the client.
That's one of the things. We had a research project done in our company to try to, rethink about our brand and who we are. And one of the things that came out of it was that coaching sometimes it gets a black eye, because I'm not saying this is what people are listening in on this, but some coaches out there just sort of tell clients what they want to hear, and then they, collect a check and move on. But those who actually tell the truth, to the point where you risk the client itself, I think Patrick Lencioni had a great book that was talking about his firm. And one of the principles was you always have to be able to risk losing the work out of the principle of telling the truth. And I sweat sometimes. I rehearse sometimes when it comes down, like, okay, here it is. I'm going to have to tell the CEO the truth on something, and it always comes back, and almost always they're grateful for that. So, Mark, tell us more about the book. What are some of the key things that we're going to learn out of it if we read it, and other ways in which we might be able to connect with you as a coach and in your business?
So again, everything that I do is to transform the inner world, because I care about people's experience of life more than I care about the things in their life. You can be sitting in a chair in a trailer park and be happy. You can be sitting in a chair in an 8-bedroom house and be miserable.
Right.
So that internal perspective is what I care about, because I want people to have I want them to have a good, I want them to have the best, most juicy, wonderful experience of life that they can possibly have. I use leadership, and the best compliment I got for the Rising Leader Handbook was from the godfather of coaching himself, Steve Chandler. I don't know if you know who he is. He's written about 30 books, and he has a coaching school, and everybody knows Steve Chandler as the godfather of coaching. And I sent him the advanced copy of the book, terrified. I didn't want the feedback. I was terrified. Like, who am I to write a leadership book? I just didn't I had this internal drive to write this book, and I was terrified to put it out in the world. And he says, "Oh, I needed a book to read this weekend." And on Sunday, I get a note back from him and said, "Silverman, you wrote the best, most thorough leadership book I have ever read in my entire life."
Wow, nice.
And I sat there and cried, because Steve had fired me a decade ago as a client and said, "Silverman, you shouldn't be a coach. You need therapy." So for Steve to actually say that, and he said the reason why the Rising Leader Handbook is so good is because it's a spiritual solution to a practical problem. And I never mention any of it until halfway through the book. I never mention, I lead people down this path of, this is what's in it for you. This is how you should handle things. This is where you're going to go. And then we talk about doing Byron Katie's the work and doing self-inquiry on yourself to become your most resilient self. Right? Again, what I care about is the transformation of the human being. I use leadership as the tool because standing up to lead brings out everything that's going on underneath. I'm sure you've had many conversations on this podcast, how leadership, how entrepreneurship is the toughest spiritual program you will ever put yourself through. You find out who you are when you start a business. You find out all your shortcomings, you find out all your challenges, and those who actually use that as a catalyst to become the person they can be through their entrepreneurship are the entrepreneurs that win.
I think that's a very wise way of putting all this. I was talking to somebody else recently that my perspective is that more than any other social construct, religion, politics, education, business itself has the opportunity to do more positive social good than all the others. And some would say you're full of it, Newlund, but I really think that since we spend so much time here, there's so much on the line, that to be a leader these days truly is a walk through a kind of a spiritual path, even though you may not call it that. And I've always talked to people about, who cares what business you're in, what challenges you're having. This is the game we're playing. The game we're playing is we're a software company. The game we're playing is we're making cakes, whatever it might be. But the transformation is really what it's all about for you as the individual, or you as the team, or you as the company. Great meeting you, my friend. I really think you're onto something. You got some great insights, and you're just a genuine guy.
Thank you.
Nobody can see you, but you're just you're a ball of sunshine. And I really appreciate your honesty and your insights and your presence.
Thank you. This was a great conversation. I've been looking through the podcast. The stuff you bring to the world is really cool.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for listening to Leadervation with Dean Newlund. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadervation.